It's working. Okay. Come on in. So, just some feedback then on yesterday. I want to do a bit of a context for you. Someone in your group, one person preferably, who at this stage probably didn't do much yesterday, and you know who that person in your group is, they could be the person you can nominate to actually enter the data into an Excel spreadsheet. Someone has to download the spreadsheet. You can start doing it today during the class time. Entering the data into Excel spreadsheet, which allows you to do some analysis. You'll find in the spreadsheet, it's one we've been using for some time. There's some stuff on climate change, some stuff on business and tourists, and clearly you ignore those. Just enter in the information into that spreadsheet associated with the questions, and I'll show you that in a minute how it actually works. The reason why we don't want to change the spreadsheet is that we've got data going back now 3 or 4 years, and we wish we had this stuff in there. And when we combine the data into one, we're now going to have well over 1,500 surveys being done of beaches. You also add to that database, so it makes it easy. I want to show you an example of how the data is being used, because while you're doing it for your assignment, it is being used elsewhere as well. Rebecca and I are doing some work for the National Sea Change Task Force, and we're looking at 4 coastal communities in WA. I want to show you the kind of stuff that we're doing and how the surveys that you've done, we're using those identically in this work that we're doing. So we're looking at 4 settlements: Shoalwater, Falcon, Leicester North and Flinders. I want to show you what each one looks like. This is Shoalwater Bay here, which is Rockingham. It's a nice little community which is bounded by a very busy road there and also by the coast around here. So that's Shoalwater Bay. It's a nice little family beach with not much waves. There's a marine park for the islands offshore. There's a bit of kite surfing goes on there. Some of the old houses there, you've got the old shacks like this one. Some of the 60s buildings like that. Some of there's a couple of apartment buildings like this from the 70s. We're now getting more modern buildings occurring as well. And the whole idea about what is character for these places becomes important. And it gets back to the very first question we had today about not wanting to change. Communities sometimes see this kind of stuff and say, well, it's out of character. But what do we mean by character? This study is looking at character for that. There's on the foreshore there, you can see there's a cafe here, and also there's a place where you can book tours to go to the islands around there. Then we look at Falcon, which is down near Mandurah. So that's there. And that's Falcon there. It's a north-facing beach, so it's quite protected. And there's quite an old community in this part here, which we're looking at. So that's the beach again. It's a bit of a mixed beach, a bit flat there today, but you can see some of the houses going up here. Family beach, very nice little family beach. A lot of old grey people, older people retiring down there as well. Nice little viewing platforms and that. There's one tiny little shop on the beachfront there. And some of the buildings, again, old shacks, some of the more holiday type places, and then the more modern architecture occurs as well. And some of you might argue some interesting architecture which doesn't quite fit in. Then we look at Leicester North, which is down here, just north of Bunbury. And it's an estuary, and as you can see, it's quite an interesting community in that it's quite different at the top, very much rural land uses. Then we go further down, you can see special rural into special residential, and then we go down towards the bottom, you can see full-blown residential. So it's each of these communities is quite different we're looking at. And then we go down to Flinders Bay, which is near Augusta, so there's Augusta there. Flinders Bay is this little community here. Only about 40-odd houses in the community. Only about half of those are actually permanently occupied, the rest are weekenders. There's quite a different community of all of those there. So the beaches, it's a sandy, rocky mixed beach. They've got a bit of heritage in the park there. Some interesting bit of artwork there, collecting all the thongs on the beach and that kind of thing. Some of the houses, old asbestos houses, newer ones, 2-storey, more modern houses, and then you have the monstrosity, like the big house at the back there, which we had. Now, what we're doing, we'll just skip over that. It's similar to what you guys did. We did a survey of beach users and residents. We asked them to do the values question. And here's the outcome of that. And this is where it starts to get quite interesting. You can start looking at the data and what it actually means. And remember, these are all the 4 together. It allows you to compare them. What's kind of interesting is that the things that score the lowest are the economic ones. And of course, fishing is quite low as well. But even though people who live on the beach actually get a high economic return from their property, most people who do the survey aren't those people. Some of them are, some of them aren't. So they're not identified as being economically very high. But look at things like ecosystem. I'm interested to see how your beaches score on those and how we can compare, for example, Hillary's as an ecosystem compared with some of the smaller beaches. Look at things like wilderness. All those beaches score pretty high with the exception of, which one's that, Falcon, on being places which are considered to be wilderness, but still quite high, even though all those beaches are quite developed. Then we look at the sense of location, sense of place. Each of those places has a very strong sense of place. They're quite localised communities, been there for a fair while, so not surprising. Then we have the scenic quality as well, and culture and so on. So I'm not going to go through in sort of details with you, but can you see that what it allows you to do is to start getting an understanding of how people value these beaches, and it allows you to do some comparisons. And that's going to help you in your assignment. When you look at your particular beach, you'll have all the data from all the groups available to you to have a look at. So you can compare your beach with a highly developed beach, and it gives you a sense of how it's valued differently, and therefore understanding of, when you're designing a tourism development, how you might look at it more differently. With coastal character, this is a similar stuff that we did. This is the same question we asked them, and I want to show you some of the results we got from these 4 communities. And we had, so that's that Canal Estate question, and you can see that all of them said it's really out of character. Strongly so, with possible exception of Leschenhall, the least strongest there. And these are the average scores. What we've done, we've averaged across all of the respondents, same with the values one. The wilderness one, interestingly, despite the fact that all those beaches are highly developed, you can see that they're saying that scene is highly in character. Now, can you see what's going on here? This is not about what is real and what is on the ground. This is people's perceptions about character. And so if they all think this is that wilderness type scene is highly valued, highly in character, development needs to be conscious of that and what it actually means. Caravan parks, Flinders Bay and Leschenhall do have caravan parks in the advice, and I'm surprised it's reflecting that. Boating, you see that boating here, pretty high for all of them, but boating type activities is quite acceptable, with the possible exception of Falcon there. And then we have these kind of cafe developments that are going on. So you can see that with the exception of Leschenhall, that's probably not acceptable. All of these are saying in effect that development on the foreshore is largely out of character. So there's resistance to having cafes and stuff on those particular benchmarks. This will allow you to compare with yours. Now clearly if you're going to be in Hillary's, this sort of stuff's going to be quite in character. But some of the other places that may not. I think there's only one on the beach, I think Mullaloo Beach has got a cafe close to the beach, but not actually on the beach. Then when we did this question, not surprisingly, all out of character. So at least it gives you an idea what people kind of think about stuff. Now, we have to be cautious with this data. While that is clearly saying that's out of character, if development's going to occur, we're going to tread on some toes. The question is how you manage it, and clearly doing this kind of stuff here is going to be highly resisted by the community. So we have to be cautious about that kind of thing. So look at your data and see what it is actually saying. So I'll upload this data so you can have a look at it and you can compare it with yours. So each of you, therefore, each group has to start to load all that data from the surveys into the Excel spreadsheet, and they'll need to have them by the end of this week. Because over the weekend, I'll combine all the data together so you can see it all, and you can start comparing your beaches with other beaches. And we can talk more about that in class next week. Okay, so this is what the kind of spreadsheet is going to look like. So yours is pretty much unfilled out, but you will have the data in. And so you enter in your data here, your code, the name of the beach, the date, the time, and the questions here. There's a couple of business questions here you don't have to answer. So the business owner ones, you ignore those questions. The business visitor ones you ignore, and here we get to the visitor information beach. So that's where you put your data there. And can you make sure that you enter letters where it says letters? Because what we do a sort on. I do a sort on that by alphabetical order, so I can then produce graphs for that. With the activities, you put ones in. Don't put ticks or crosses, you put one in if it's an activity there. And the reason why you do that is you can see you can total at the bottom. It's a simple formula that the spreadsheet's already set up for this. You simply add, it'll add add up what you enter there. So so just put ones in for that. Then you can see across, well, this is Smith's Beach, this one, which is, and then we have the satisfaction stuff here, all the surveys, and we get the coastal values. So you enter the scores in here, and the bottom there, it does an averaging straight away. So the data, the formula is already put in there. So you get an average of the values, and the same with the coastal characters. Add in the scores and make sure you put in, if it's -2, you put in -2. So make sure you get the sign correct. So it adds it all up. And then you get this is actually, I don't know why it's all going all funny, but anyway, and then you have all the information at the end. And you'll notice that what we did in the surveys, we asked the personal questions at the end, not at the start. It's not a good idea to go to someone and say, straight away, how old are you? It's because some people get offended by that. Therefore, they cut off, they don't do the survey. We always do the personal stuff at the end. When they've answered all the other questions, they're more relaxed and comfortable with you, and then they'll answer these sort of questions there. Okay, so that's the database, and I need that done by Friday close of business. So over the weekend, I'll combine all the data and load it back up onto the website for you, so you can see what your data is and check it all. So today, task number 1 is to identify the person who's going to do that data upload. And you can start doing it in class today, and when we have time. That's the first thing. Any questions about that? Okay. Now, the reason why we're doing this, as I said, is all I'm going to give you an overview of this assignment. We'll post it and go through it in more detail next week. The purpose of the exercise is to design a sustainable tourism development at your beach. Long and short. Therefore, you need data to do that. So, a sustainable tourism development at your beach. You will need your set of objectives. So you will use your objectives you've done for the first assignment. So today's job will be, as a group, to do a consensus exercise and have a list of, say, 12-odd objectives you're going to use for your assignment. So that's the first thing as a group, you're going to do that. And it's a kind of group process which substitutes for governance. Even though you're not a member, you don't live in that beach area, you've got an understanding of it now, and you appreciate its values, and you can start to work out what are the key objectives you're going to use for this assignment. So it's a kind of consensus approach to do that. The next step, and which I'll stop you in about 15